Okay, my name is Steve Mace from Solwise, and what I'm going to do now is run through a PowerPoint presentation introducing you to the EnGenius Neutron Managed Wi-Fi solution, which is a product system that we're selling now for 18 months, 2 years, and basically it's one of these managed Wi-Fi solutions that you hear so much about. So let's have a look. Let's go straight to the actual exciting. So, managed Wi-Fi solution. Now, it's a term that's often bandied around. Everybody thinks it's the elixir to making fantastic Wi-Fi and solves all their problems. But exactly what is a managed Wi-Fi solution? And in order to answer that, what I need to do is talk about what are the objectives of a Wi-Fi network. What is a Wi-Fi network actually used for? What do you need it for? Well, the main purpose of a Wi-Fi network, obviously, is to give network connectivity from a client device to the network as a whole. So it's just a physical medium over which the traffic passes between the client and the network and back again. What that traffic does, or what it's used for, is not an intrinsic part of the Wi-Fi network. The Wi-Fi network is just the physical medium for the transport of that data. So, if we're going to give pain-free Wi-Fi connectivity to the users, then what we need out of the Wi-Fi is good coverage, good speed, good stability, and more importantly nowadays is good security on that data. Now, other aspects of the Wi-Fi connectivity, which as far as I'm concerned are outside the strict remit of the Wi-Fi connectivity. Remember, I said, as far as I'm concerned, the purpose of the Wi-Fi connectivity is just a physical medium for transferring data. It's not necessarily directly related to what the data is or what that data is being used for. So, a managed Wi-Fi solution, in my opinion, really is not involved in, for example, user control or internet access management. It's not really the remit of the managed Wi-Fi solution to do charging or site management, social media logging, blah, 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 blah. Those are all features which I think are outside the remit of a managed Wi-Fi setup. They fall into those particular examples are given here. You would normally be covered by using what is called a hotspot gateway unit to actually give you user management. So the client connects over the Wi-Fi system, he sends his data over that Wi-Fi system, but then it's the hotspot gateway unit which analyzes that data and controls access of that data, for example, to the internet. Another common piece of equipment or thing that needs to mention here, for example, is a firewall. Yet again, a firewall, not strictly the remit of the Wi-Fi element of the network. That is something which is usually done by a dedicated firewall device or router device for connection to the rest of the network or connection to the internet. So, key features that are required or which you really need from a managed Wi-Fi system. You need something which is flexible. So it can basically go from just a simple network of a few access points right up to multiple sites of thousands of access points. So you need the system which will allow for easy growth. The last thing you want is a system whereby it's nice and easy for five access points, and then suddenly when you want to increase it, you have to start learning a whole new pile of stuff. You have to start learning whole new methods. Everything changes. So a good managed Wi-Fi solution, it doesn't matter whether you've got a simple system of just 2 or 3 access points or you've got 1,000 access points. It's the same common interface with the same steady progression of access point numbers. The Wi-Fi solution needs to give you the capability to optimize coverage, minimize interference, the capability to balance client load, so you don't end up with all the clients connected to one access point when there's another one literally just 2 or 3 yards away doing nothing, twiddling its thumbs. You need the tools to allow the clients to migrate or roam between the access points. Now, roaming, I've got a particular bugbear about roaming, particularly bee in my bonnet about roaming. Everybody thinks they need roaming, but what the degree of roaming is the important factor. What people really need is the ability to, they're playing around on their phone, I don't know, doing a Facebook or streaming YouTube or whatever junk people do on their mobile phones. They're connected to the first access point, and what they want is, as they carry on walking around the building, coming under the sphere of influence of other access points, they want their client device to move across to the other access point without any break or noticeable disruption of their connection. Now, for normal, for the vast majority of what people do on their client devices nowadays, as I say, social media garbage, checking eBay things, buying something on the Amazon app or something like that, the actual time involved for that transition between the access points is not that critical. Even if you're streaming a YouTube video, you can literally have a 1 or 2 second break in that data as the client moves across, and it's not noticeable on a YouTube stream. That's because it's so heavily buffered. So most people need the capability for the clients to move between the access points, but they don't necessarily need it to be super speedy fast. We get these phone calls all the time with people saying, I want seamless roaming. And I always say, do you really want seamless roaming? Because seamless roaming, as far as I'm concerned, means that when a client goes from access point 1 to access point number 2, it happens in a few milliseconds. It's completely not noticeable, no matter what sort of data streaming they're doing. But as I say, if they're just doing Facebook stuff, or they're just doing eBay stuff, or they're just buying online from Amazon or something like that, then they wouldn't notice whether it took 10 milliseconds or 20 milliseconds or a couple of seconds for that actual hop to happen. Now, however, there's at least one key application where as seamless as possible does matter. And that's if you're doing something that involves instantaneous live streaming of data. And what by that I mean, for example, VoIP. If you're doing a VoIP call over from a mobile phone or from a client device, then a break of a couple of seconds as that client renegotiates with the next access point down the line can be quite disruptive to that call. It could even end up with the call being actually disconnected. So under those circumstances, you do need very fast roaming. So a good Wi-Fi managed system should be able to give you very fast roaming if you need it. Next thing on my list here is the administrators need to have the tools so they are quickly advised or made aware of any issues that go on with the network, such as AP overload, poor connectivity, downtime, blah, blah, blah. And once they are aware of these issues, they then need the tools to facilitate a rapid resolution of those problems. So, hey, an access point's gone down. Quickly, what can I do to fix it? And finally, on my list, I say final, I'm sure you could probably think of probably a dozen other different reasons for wanting a Wi-Fi network. But finally on my list is the ability to do easy configuration and firmware updates and changes of the operation of the network. So going back to why a managed Wi-Fi solution, or what specifically will give you a meet all those requirements I've just gone through. So first of all, you need the abilities to do optimization and stabilization. So the big issues with access points or Wi-Fi coverage is you always end up in a catch-22 situation. What you want to do is obviously have loads of access points in very close proximity to each other in order to give you total, utter saturation Wi-Fi coverage. But then on the other hand, as soon as you start to get those access points close to each other, as well as actually obviously giving you the saturation Wi-Fi coverage for the client devices, you also then start to get interference between access points. They start to see each other's Wi-Fi, and that causes issues with overload, disconnections, speed drop-throughs, stability of the network. Everything starts to go haywire. So what you want are the tools to enable you to reduce those problems so you can create a much more stable environment when the access points are working together. And that neatly goes into the next thing I've got here down here, which is background scanning. As I say, big problem is access points are close together. It's giving you good Wi-Fi coverage for the clients, but because of the interference generated between the access points, it actually is giving you quite a slow overall throughput and an unstable overall throughput. So the managed solution from Neutron has actually got this thing we call background scanning. And what that means is the access points are continuously scanning the environment and all the time checking to make sure that they are all operating on the best channels to give them minimum interference with each other, and also they can check the RF power output. So if you end up in a situation where normally what you don't obviously want is any access point or its surrounding access points to be on different channels so that they don't interfere with each other. Now occasionally you may get in a situation where you have two access points which unfortunately due to other restrictions, channel usage, that sort of thing, are ending up having to be on the same channel. But in that case, what you want is the ability for the access points to modulate their power so they still cover the gap in between themselves, but don't actually interfere with each other. So the system from EnGenius, the Neutron system, actually has this tool called background scanning, which goes around and is constantly checking that it's on the right, that all the access points are on the right channel and they're running at the correct RF power. And this is something which is all the time going on and all the time can be dynamically self-regulating and self-changing. Fast roaming, that sort of thing I mentioned at the bottom. Mentioned that already, why you want fast roaming or why people think they want fast roaming. What else we got? Balancing and shaping. So what we want out of our managed Wi-Fi solution is the ability for basically optimizing the throughput and the QoS and distributing the load over the network evenly. So you don't end up with a situation where you've got some access points which are getting oversubscribed by clients, overworked, but you've got other access points which are actually sat there being underworked, just sat there twiddling their thumbs. You need tools for central and remote management. So whether that's managing devices all in one place through a central device, or doing the remote management of the access points and the network as a whole. Captive portal. That captive portal, I remember 2 or 3 slides ago I said, as far as I was concerned, a hotspot gateway is not part of a managed Wi-Fi solution. Well, we certainly, us and EnGenius, got badgered about including some form of captive portal, open brackets, hotspot gateway, close bracket, functionality into Neutron. And EnGenius have done that. The only issue is the type of captive portal that they put in my opinion, is very basic and very crude. All it really does, it doesn't do all the social media logging in, it doesn't do charging bands, etc, etc, etc. All it really does is give you the ability to pop up with a screen saying phrases like, "Welcome to Joe Blogs CAF. Please tick the box below to agree to the T&Cs." That's all it really does. So it has got a captive portal, but it's quite crude. So overall, the aim here with Neutron is that the overall configuration management of your Wi-Fi network becomes quicker and easier to do. And this slide brings in this new phrase here called ezMaster, or this new thing called ezMaster. I'll come to ezMaster later on, but ezMaster is a software add-on which has been made available for the Neutron system. So let's go to the next slide. So to summarize what Neutron gives you distributed network management solution, all usually carried out through an all-in-one AP management switch, which I'll talk about in a minute, a range of indoor and outdoor access points. Typically using the all-in-one management switch, we're talking about deployments up to 50 access points per site. However, if you use the ezMaster, remember I mentioned that free software that you can download and install. If you use the ezMaster, you can actually expand that to give you up to 1,000 access points and the ability to do cross-site, multi-site administration through the ezMaster. If you just go for a single AP management switch, and let's say a bunch of access points, let's say 20 or 30 access points, that really is just for a single site. So you can have two sites, each with their own AP management switch, and each site with their own selection of access points. So each site is treated as a separate entity. If you then take ezMaster, what you can do is you can bring those two sites under a single management project. So one project covers all of the different sites under a single banner. Typical applications: small, medium-sized offices, hospitality, education, etc. It gives you easy installation and easy AP configuration and monitoring. So let's go through the various options for our management platform. At the bottom, we've got the traditional way that people have actually looked after or managed their Wi-Fi access points, which is a selection of standalone access points, and you go into each access point individually in order to go through and set up its configuration. Now, if you then jump to the next stage, you can go for the Neutron Management Solution based around a controller. So that gives you a centralized route to manage all of the access points on your site in that one management point. So rather than going to each access point individually, you just go to one point, which is the controller, and you control all of the access points through that one point. Next stage up, you could add ezMaster to it, which will allow you to actually integrate all your multiple controller switch sites all together under a single project. And right, so ezMaster. I'll just go back to ezMaster. ezMaster is a free piece of software which you can download from the EnGenius site or from Solwise, and it's a free piece of software that you install on a PC, and immediately you can start doing management of your Neutron systems through the ezMaster front end. Now, it's a piece of software that you download and install on a computer. We've had now that is I would hasten to add, that is extremely easy. All right, it's a big download, but once you've downloaded it, you can install it literally in the space of less than 10 minutes. So within 10 minutes you've installed it, you're up and running. It's not rocket science. It's got very easy installation. Doesn't need a super powerful computer to run it on, and quite often when I go to site doing demonstrations, I'm just running it on a 10-year-old Dell notebook. In fact, this very notebook that we're doing this on now. So I've always encouraged people, download the ezMaster, install it on any old computer you've got lying around in the building. However, we had a lot of resistance to this, and a lot of resellers, distributors, end users, that sort of thing, really balked at the idea of running the software themselves. They would rather the software was actually run somewhere else for them. So a hosted cloud version of ezMaster, which is what we're talking about here. So what EnGenius have decided to do is, sometime this year, being 2018, they will actually launch a hosted cloud version of ezMaster, which they're calling ezM Cloud. Which basically means what happens is they'll be running ezMaster for you on their own servers dotted around the world. However, because they're having to supply the server, they're having to supply the bandwidth, that sort of thing, it will be a charged for service. Now, this is completely different from the policy in the past. In the past, the Neutron system has had no charges for licenses, no charges for firmware updates, no charges for support. Absolutely zero ongoing charges. You buy the equipment, you install the equipment, you use the equipment, but there are no ongoing licensing, firmware updates, administration, blah 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 charges. Once you've got the kit, it's yours to use whatever way you will. I say, even if you go for the ezMaster, it's a free piece of software that you can download. It doesn't cost you anything to run it. All you need is a cheap and cheerful PC, Windows PC, to bang it on. ezM Cloud, they're changing the goalpost slightly, because it's actually going to cost them money hosting it, there will actually be a charge for using that hosted service. And I must admit, at this stage, we don't know what that charge is going to be. So let's look at the key ingredients or elements of a Neutron system. So at the middle of it, what you have is you have a controller switch. So I'll explain about the controller switch. Up until a few years ago, EnGenius were already produced and sold a range of very powerful management switches. So these are traditional management switches, and by management I mean the ability to control the data through the switch, control the operation of the LAN ports, etc. So built-in QoS, VLANs, access control lists, blah 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 blah, everything else that you expect to see on a managed switch. So what EnGenius did was they took some of their range of managed switches and included an extra software module on them, which is the actual Neutron controller software. So what you ended up with is a switch which is actually running two programs at the same time. It's running the traditional switch management program, and alongside it's running the Neutron Wi-Fi management program. So two things running on the switch. So it's like just having two applications or two programs running on your Windows computer. So you've got two programs running. Traditionally you only had one program, which was the management of the switch program. Now you've got the management of the Wi-Fi running on at the same time. So that's an all-in-one controller switch. So you've got a range of all-in-one controller switches, and the difference between them basically is the number of LAN ports they've got, whether they've got PoE or not, and if they've got PoE, the amount of PoE power. That's the key difference between them. And off the top of my head, I believe there are about 9 or 10 different switches for you to choose from. To complement them, we've got a range of indoor access points. Now, invariably, these are ceiling or wall mount access points. That's basically because this is a system aimed at business, hospitality, educational usage. So it comes with a range of indoor access points. Yet again, I think there's probably about 9 or 10 indoor access points for it to go complement the system. There's a difference between them effectively is the whether it's 2.4 and or 5 gig and the speed of the Wi-Fi. So they go right from little piddly 2.4 gig 300 meg units right up to modern 2.5 gigabit wave 2 devices. The whole range is covered. So what we've also got is a selection of outdoor access points. There's about half a dozen different outdoor access points. Yet again, the difference is what sort of Wi-Fi they send out, whether it's high speed or low speed or whatever. That's the key difference between them all. And what you can do now to complement the whole system is you can put on this free ezMaster software. So just to recap what the ezMaster gives you, so the ezMaster is a piece of free software that you're running somewhere which allows you to connect and communicate over the internet to your various Neutron installations. So you could have multiple sites, quick example here of multiple sites, branch offices, HQs, warehouse, blah, 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 and each of those can have its own little Neutron system running on it. And they are all then talking back over the internet to your centralized ezMaster, so you can use your ezMaster to manage each of these sites individually or en masse. Now, one thing that ezMaster can do is traditionally what happened with Neutron was you have your controller switch and a collection worth of access points. That was your Neutron system. What ezMaster does is it will actually allow you to have sites without the controller. So you can have a site which is just a couple of access points, and the access points can be talking back over the internet to the ezMaster, and you can use the ezMaster then to manage that site which only has a couple of access points, i.e. there's no controller at the site. There are advantages to having a controller at the site, which I can talk about later on. So there are advantages of having a controller, but in theory you can actually use ezMaster to look after Neutron access points at a site where there is no controller. Now typically that might be, we have that situations where we have one customer, for example, they have multiple shop branches. Now each branch only needs one access point, so they've theorized that there's not really worth putting the extra expense and complexity of a Neutron controller into each of those individual sites just for one access point. It's a little bit overkill. So what they can do is at each of those sites they can put their single access point in at their retail store and then just tell that single access point to communicate back over the internet to the ezMaster, and that way they can do management and administration of the access point at that store. So yes, I should mention that really. This thing here called Smart Sync and Easy Redundancy. One, I don't want to give the impression that if you set up a system like this, that if the ezMaster goes down for any reason, for example, the internet feed to where the ezMaster is located dies, that all this starts to go belly up. It doesn't. The good thing about the Neutron hardware, be it Neutron consisting of access points and a controller, or access points which are standalone, good thing about them is that there's enough intelligence in the devices for them to carry on operating even if something goes wrong with their controller link. So if this internet feed here failed, feeding this this management link to these actual access points, if it failed, the access points would just carry on working exactly the same way. There will be no difference as far as the operator or users in this area is concerned. They will still carry on talking to that access point as if nothing had happened. And then what happens is, if the internet, or when the internet comes back up again, what actually happens is these access points will then talk back to the ezMaster, resync, and full management is available yet again. And this is the same really when you've got a site which consists of a controller with separate access points. The access points are intelligent enough such that even something goes down with the controller, as long as they're still being powered up, they'll still carry on working. So the access points can still carry on working even if the controller goes down or connection to the controller is broken or something like that. So let's go through to so what are we getting out of Neutron and what are we getting out of ezMaster? So what I've got here is got a Venn diagram that shows what you get if you have ezMaster on its own, what you got if you go the traditional route of having a Neutron switch with your access points, and then what happens if you combine the two elements. So you notice that there are things missing here if you have ezMaster on its own. So you lose some of the troubleshooting, you lose the ability to get topology views, and obviously if it was a PoE switch, you lose all that functionality as well. You can still do all the basic management, all the project configuration, even the captive portal of a site which has standalone access points without a switch. But adding a switch does give the capabilities to do extra troubleshooting and extra error analysis. So in my opinion, it's a good idea to have both. Now, remember I said that if you've got a site that's only, let's say, one access point, then putting a whole Neutron switch in may seem a bit overkill. But the price of the Neutron switches has actually come down quite significantly over the last couple of years. So whereas, all right, with one access point, it's probably still not worth putting Neutron switch in. But if you've got, when you start to get towards 2 or 3 access points, it's, in my opinion, it is worth putting a Neutron switch in. You can put one of the, for example, the EWS 2910, which is a really low-cost starter point Neutron switch. So, because let's face it, if you've got 2 or 3 access points, you need a switch anyway. And invariably, you probably need a PoE switch anyway. So if you're going to put a PoE switch anyway, you might as well make it something like the EWS 2910, which is a small switch with Neutron management, and it's PoE as well. So if you're going to put one in, you might as well put the little a Neutron switch in anyway. So, all right, maybe a site with one access point, maybe you can argue it's not worth actually putting a whole Neutron switch in. But certainly if you get to 2, 3, 4 access points, in my opinion, it's definitely worth putting a Neutron switch in. I say you need a switch anyway, so you might as well make it a Neutron switch. Okay, let's go through the key features that you get out of your Neutron system. Now, as you can see, it's got just about everything. There's very little. In fact, I would really struggle to find something which Neutron doesn't do. The thing about Neutron, and this is, stop doing that, and the thing about all of the products from EnGenius is generally they are very high specification products. They usually cram in just about every single functionality and feature you can think of. So this is just a list of all the things that Neutron gives you, and just look at the list. What's missing. It's got everything. It's got auto discovery, client fingerprinting, band steering, traffic shaping, guest network. That's the captive portal. All right, that's a bit diffy, but it's got it. It's got the fast roaming protocols, K and R, different levels of Wi-Fi security, VLANs, client monitoring, topology views, map views, heat maps, network security, different management tools. It's got the lot. So very high specification system, very high performance access points. Very, very well specified products. Okay. So let's go through the product lineup. So remember I said at the beginning that what EnGenius did was they took their range of switches and produced a new range of switches which was exactly the same as the old switches, except they also had the Neutron management element running on them as well. So for a long time EnGenius had two ranges of switches. They had the traditional switches, management switches, which they called the EGS model range. All their part numbers started EGS. And then what they did was, running side by side, they had a range of switches called EWS. So each EGS switch would have its corresponding EWS version. The difference between them being the EWS had the Neutron stuff on them and the EGS didn't have the Neutron stuff on them. Now, very quickly, well, I say very quickly, within about 18 months, EnGenius realized that keeping two lines of switches in production was just making life a nightmare. It was increasing everybody's stock load that they had to carry, making it complicated manufacturing, shipping, blah, 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 blah. So what they did was, about 6 months ago, they decided to phase out the EGS range and just have the EWS range. So EWS, as I say, are normal management switches, and they have the Neutron stuff built in as well. So what they did was they said, right, we're going to phase out the EGS. But if you have a site which doesn't need Neutron, or you have a position where you don't need Neutron, you still go for your EWS switch, but you just toggle off the Neutron management option on the setup screen. So what you'll find is when you go into the EWS switches, you're hit with a first initial screen, and there's two menu options shown on that screen. One is controller, one is management. And if you go click on controller, there's an option on the screen, enable or disable. So what that means is if you've got a site which, let's say, needs two switches, one of them has to be a Neutron management switch, the other one non-Neutron. So you go for two switches. The one that's going to be a Neutron one, you make sure that that toggle box is ticked enabled. The one that's not going to be used as a Neutron switch, so you still want a switch, you still want a management switch, but you don't want Neutron in that switch. So for that second switch, all you do is you tick off for that option. So that way, they don't have to worry about keeping multiple switches or very similar specification apart from one extra software feature missing or not there. They can actually have a constant range covering all the different bases. And just to sweeten things up, what they did was they then slashed the price of the EWS switches to be the same price or even cheaper as the outgoing EGS models. So it was a win-win situation all round. So let's look at the EWS switches currently available. I say currently available, it's a constantly expanding range. So these are all the EWS switches, that's Neutron Management Switches, which have PoE functionality. They, apart from the little 2910, which I've already mentioned, the little 2910 only can manage 20 access points. All the rest can cope with 50 access points. So this can actually do neutron management of 50 neutron access points on the network. This can only cope with 20. The other difference between them really is the number of LAN ports and the amount of PoE power coming out of them. So this little one here has got 8 ports, but only 4 of them have got PoE, and it's only got a total of 60 odd watts worth of total PoE power. And at the other end you've got one here which is 48 ports with a total of 740 watts PoE power. So there's really a PoE switch to meet every demand. Now, due to customer feedback, they've also now started to produce some Neutron management switches which have exactly the same management functionality as the previous models, the models on the previous slide, but they just don't have the PoE. And this is because we started to get a lot of feedback from customers who said, look, I've already spent an absolute bloody fortune on this selection of PoE switches for my site. You know, we talk about switches here with HP written on them or Cisco written on them, you know, really expensive PoE switches. So I want all the Neutron stuff. I want your access points and that sort of thing, but I don't want to actually have to go through the expense of buying some PoE switches. So what they did was, or what EnGenius have done with the Neutron now, is they've started to produce a range of Neutron switches. So they've got all the Neutron stuff in them, got all the switch management stuff in them, but they just haven't got the PoE. So this is these 3 models. So for example, the 1200D 10T, this little tin box on the top, that's the equivalent of that 2910 on the previous side. Just to recap, so the 2910 was 8 ports with 60 watts PoE. And to complement that, you've got the 1200D 10T, which is really a 2910 but without the PoE functionality. And you've also got the 28T and the 52T, and the difference between them is essentially the number of LAN ports, but no PoE functionality on this selection of switches. And also, due sometime in 2018, we also have a range of switches coming on board which have 10 gig SFP ports. So whereas the previous models, just to recap, you notice they've all got slots for SFP modules. See here that these have all got slots for SFP modules. Even the little bottom of the range one has 2 slots suitable for SFP modules, and these all have, as you see, slots for SFP modules. But what they're doing is later on in 2018 they're introducing some new switches which are actually capable of coping with SFP slots capable of 10 gig operations. So these will actually have the ability to do 10 gig uplinks through the SFP ports. So these are new models coming later on in 2018. So let's quickly go through the access points part of your Neutron system. So I think there's 5 outdoor access points. Actually, I think this is out of date. I've got a feeling there are 6 outdoor access points now available. I'm not 100% sure of that about. But the difference between all the outdoor access points is effectively the capabilities of the Wi-Fi. At the bottom end, we have the 650, which is 300 meg 2.4, 867.11ac, and we can scroll right up to the top where we've got the new 1.7 gig 11ac, 800 meg 2.4 gig Wave 2 products. So there's a selection of outdoor access points, and the difference between them is the performance of the Wi-Fi and also the layout of the antennas. For example, you notice the 871 and the 870. Look at this beast, has 8 external antennas on it, quite a beast, whereas this one The 870 model, so that's the 870 model, really is just operating with internal antennas. Now, obviously, the difference is you've got size constraints to the size of antennas you can actually put into this box. So the 870 makes do with only 3 dB antennas, 3 dBi antennas, whereas the 871, because it's got external antennas, can go for much higher gain antennas. So that's the range of outdoor access points. We've got a corresponding range of indoor. Yet again, the difference between them being the Wi-Fi power, Wi-Fi functionality, sorry. So at the bottom end, we've got 2.4 gig, 300 meg, and surprisingly, still quite a good seller. People still do want single band 2.4 gig access points. I think mainly because of the price. You can get a 2.4 gig one, and now they're quite cheap access points. And yet again, then we go through the distances with all the rest of dual band with different speeds of 2.4 stroke 5 gig operation, right up to the top where you've got the new Wave 2 products giving you 1.7 gig Wave 2 11AC functionality. Right, wall plate access points, or on the wall access points. One of the target markets for Neutron has always been the hospitality sector, the hotel sector. And what they've done is they've designed some access points which are designed to sit on a wall on top of a normal UK 86 by 86 mil wall box. So, you know, the sort of wall box that you use for electricity sockets and light switches and that sort of thing. So they've brought out this range of what they call wall plate access points. So what happens is, and they're all PoE powered, so what happens is you have a LAN cable going into the back of your wall box, which is bringing you data and your power. And that clips or plugs into the back of these wall plate access points, which then fit using a mounting bracket over that wall box. Now, I think these are quite good, because what you get out of them is you get multiple LAN port functionality and you get the Wi-Fi all in a slim wall unit. And in fact, I personally think these are even quite good for just a normal domestic scenario. We've all got the situation where our telly is, for example. Our telly, we want Wi-Fi in that room where the telly is, and also we need a bunch of LAN ports, etc., where the telly is. So you can use these on the wall. You've got all your LAN ports there, and you've got the Wi-Fi. So I think these are great for the domestic setup. And certainly, for example, the EWS 500 is very, very low priced. So you could actually use the EWS 500 and don't worry about using it as part of a Neutron system. Actually, just buy these and use them as standalone access points. The very nice thing, I think, for the domestic situation. Though saying that, we have actually sold quite a few Neutron systems as Neutron systems for the domestic market. We've had people with, you know, big posh mansions and that sort of thing who have said, you know, we want a really good managed Wi-Fi solution. Invariably, these are people who really don't know why they think they need a managed Wi-Fi solution, but they think they do. And, you know, hey, if they're throwing the money around, we'll sell it to them. So they rush off and buy themselves a Neutron system for their nice big new mansion that's cost them £1 million or something like that. So it is actually, believe it or not, a solution which is not just applicable to the traditional markets, the business market, hospitality markets, but actually it does have some presence there in the domestic market as well. So anyway, differences, wall plate access points, you're getting differences, the Wi-Fi performance, and a few options, number of LAN ports and that sort of thing. So just to go through the various options that you can do with a wall plate access point. So you can use the access point obviously as part of a Neutron management solution. The access point itself has, obviously, the wall plate access point obviously has Wi-Fi capability for wireless clients. It also has pass-through for telephone solutions. So you notice there's a one LAN port on it, which is actually not a LAN data port. It's just a pass-through port going from the back to the front for a telephone connection. You've got data connections, you've even got PoE coming out of them to power a VoIP phone, and you've got other LAN ports on them that can be used, for example, for IP control, IPTV, or fridge control, because of course the thing now is to have an Internet of Things. So you can have a fridge which you can turn on and off and that sort of thing over your network. So that's the EWS wall mount access points. And another new thing that's appeared recently, it's about 6 months ago, sort of halfway through 2017, is a Neutron camera, IP camera. So this is an IP camera which has all the functions that you expect to see in a high-powered, high-specification IP camera. So it's got full 1920 by 1080 resolution at 30 frames. It's dome mounted. It's got an app so you can look at it on internet and all that sort of thing. All these things that people want to see out of a good IP camera nowadays. But as well as that, it has built-in dual-band Wi-Fi. So built into it, it's got 300 meg and 867 meg Wi-Fi. So it will actually work as a Wi-Fi access point to cover the area where the camera is located. And of course, it's Neutron compliant, which means you can use a Neutron system to control that wireless element of this camera. And they've now also added an extra little thing to it, is it will do meshing. So you can actually have a collection of these IP cameras which will actually act as mesh repeaters between each other as well. So if you're in a particular position where you need to get a camera in but you just can't get a data connection to it, you can get power to it but you can't get a data connection to it, you can actually use it now as part of a meshed repeater system. So very flexible piece of kit, and it's had some good write-ups in the press as well. So it's a good camera, and the Wi-Fi is just a nice little feather in its cap. So that concludes my video going through introducing the what EnGenius is, what the EnGenius Neutron Management System is. So hopefully now you're well clued up with what Neutron gives you, what a managed Wi-Fi solution gives you, and the various hardware options if you go the Neutron route. So that's the end of that video, and in the next video I'll actually go through a more hands-on approach to actually show you what the configuration screens do and how the setup and configuration works. So that's it. Thank you very much.